This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And welcome, everybody, to Kentucky's Voice. That's right. This is Andrew Cooperrider. You may be thinking to yourself, hold on a second. Didn't I just get the Cooperrider yesterday? That's right. You did. You are a lucky individual. God has blessed you. You are getting Andrew Cooperrider twice this week here on Kentucky's Voice. And not only are you just getting me today, we're also joined by the great and powerful pastor brother Lee Watts, host of Patriot Point, fantastic individual. We'll be discussing a lot about the Capitol renovation project, hundreds of millions of dollars being spent up there. We'll be digging into that. So if you want to join into the conversation, feel free to shoot us a text, 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. We'll get into, had a couple of texts from yesterday's show as well. We'll get into that here in the second segment. But first, I want to give you guys a chance to get in your questions with Lee while we are conversing during this first segment. So that's 502-571-0970. Lee Watts, the man of many titles. What are all your titles? So host of Patriot Point. What else?
Host of Patriot Point. I serve as the volunteer chaplain to the Kentucky State Capitol, and I'm also an evangelist. A little bit closer. All right. Do I need to repeat?
No, you're good.
Okay. So, yeah, I serve as an evangelist, the chaplain to the Capitol. Then I also host Patriot Point.
Fantastic. Okay, so
an all-around swell guy.
All-around swell guy. I can attest to that. You are a very nice man. While your hair may be afraid of you, nobody else should be.
There's a few people who don't necessarily like me.
Of course. That was a bald joke, by the way, for those of you who can't see, because we're live on the radio right now, by the way. For those of you who can't see, he
emphatically challenged.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good statement there. I like that. So, Brother Lee, the Capitol building is going through a massive renovation. How much are they spending on that?
They're going to be spending $291.5 million over the next few years, and that number of years is kind of up in the air right now to do this major renovation project.
Does that include now? Because I know that they decided to build a temporary legislative chambers. Is that included in that cost?
I do believe it is included in that cost, but I won't swear to that.
Okay.
So they built, it's supposedly temporary building on the Capitol grounds that the legislature is going to move into during this time. Personally, I don't think it's going to be temporary because they're going to use this thing for years. And then after this is done, the rumor is they're going to then work on the annex building and then move some of the annex people in there. Right now, we have the state.
What is the temporary building made of? Is it like
it is a full metal steel beams? It's not like some trailers they put in there.
Okay,
they built an entire building for $18 million on this thing. Right now, we have the state auditor, the state treasurer, and the Commissioner of Agriculture, who all rent space downtown.
Right.
If we, after this project's over and the legislature moves back in the Capitol, I think it'd be best use of Kentucky taxpayer money to move those statewide offices to the Capitol grounds to utilize that building instead of tearing it down.
Well, and, when it comes to building the temporary building, one thing that was very confusing to me, because it's obviously very expensive. I mean, you just said it was $18 million?
Yes, sir.
$18 million to build a quote-unquote temporary building. You have KSU's campus that's nearby.
Right.
You have, obviously, the caucus rooms that are nearby, because the only work the legislators themselves do inside the actual Capitol building they're working on right now is hold chambers, right?
Yes.
Session. The committee rooms are all in the annex.
Correct.
Their offices are all in the annex. So literally what they built for $18 million was just two rooms that can hold, about 150-ish people on one side and about 75-ish senators and staff and all those things I'm adding in for the other group. So literally you just needed two rooms that could one handle 150, one handle 75. Is there not other rooms in Frankfort they could have used for this and save the taxpayer the money?
Well, if you think about it, they do have some large committee rooms in the annex building, as you're aware of. And there was talk about maybe knocking down a wall and combining two of those, but they didn't think that was a good long-term solution. But when you're thinking about, you're spending $18+ million for something that's supposed to be, and we'll talk about the length of it, but supposed to be 3 years. the legislature only uses the chambers a maximum of 60 days a year and 30 days on even numbered years.
Right. So the total use would be 120 days.
Yeah,
right?
120 days.
Or no,
that's not.
It would be 150 days.
Right. And so I'm like, if you add up the math, how much they're spending per day, I mean, it's tens of thousands of dollars. We could have rented a very nice place in any major hotel or anything without all of that money and time that was used.
Well, we just bailed out KSU. Do they not have?
They had spaces right there, and that's Kentucky State University. For those of you who don't know, is right there in Frankfort. You can get to it from the Capitol about 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's not that far. It's just down the road. Their enrollment's down already. They're having their own struggles. Maybe that kind of would help bring some attention to their campus.
Campus. It would have been something historic. It would have been a much better use of the people's money.
Didn't the taxpayers, too, just shell out a bunch of money to the downtown convention center or something in Frankfort to help build a convention center in Frankfort or something like that? There was something in the budget bill, I think, last year that gave like $10 million to the downtown convention center in Frankfort.
We used to have a convention center in Frankfort, but it had been there for years, was in great disrepair, so they knocked it down. So this money may be going toward building a new one.
That's right. It. So you'd wonder, like, can we not? That's my point. I mean, we're already on the hook. We could have saved. I mean, you could have built an entire convention center for $18 million. And save that money and give it to them. Just say, hey, look, you'll get the convention center. Just during this time, you can't have your conventions because we're going to be holding our chamber. I mean, that makes so much more sense.
Makes more sense. Well, every morning when I walk into the Capitol, you often see common sense walking out. But really what they should do is they should hire, instead of getting people who don't have experience with this, is hire business people to make these type of decisions. And that's, again, as a minister, everything goes back to a biblical principle.
I just couldn't think, like, going to that private business side of things, as you're just saying, I couldn't imagine, like, you walk into a room, like imagine a bunch of private business guys sitting around and they're like, okay, we're remodeling our building. What do we do in response? And I cannot imagine where do we put people? I couldn't imagine a single one of them saying, we should spend $18 million building a temporary building.
Right. So it's like the governor's there every day of the week. However, all they did for him is they moved the governor's office downtown to the old governor's mansion, which the state owns anyway. And so it's a zero cost for us.
Well, the state also owns the old Capitol building.
Right.
Still. Every year they have one day a session there as like a thing.
For historic reasons, right.
I understand it probably doesn't have modern amenities like HVAC and everything else, but could they not, for cheaper than $18 million, put in some temporary
to make it go? It could have been done much more efficiently. Hence the reason you need business people making these decisions and not a group of politicians without experience in such matters.
What do you think drives them to just kind of so flippantly spend money like that?
I think it's for this reason, is that somebody else came up with the idea, presents it to the legislators and tells them, hey, this is the best thing that we're supposed to do, and you should just vote yes for this. And to be honest, you get a lot of them who are like, okay, well, that's what I'll do then, because that's what they told me is the best idea. And it's a lot more effort to actually go through and propose something else. And if you do propose something else, then you're opposing those who are in leadership, and you therefore don't get in committees, and they're not going to help support you. That's the honest truth.
And when you dig into the overall remodel on this Capitol building, you says just south of $300 million. Okay. How much did it cost to build the Capitol building?
They actually built it for about $2 million, but that was back in the early 1900s. They finished and moved in 1910.
Okay.
Now, where we got the money from is during the Civil War, Union troops came through Kentucky and they stayed in people's houses, which is a violation of the Third Amendment, saying no quartering of troops. So we sued the federal government after the war, saying you violated Third Amendment. We won the case, and the federal government had to give us a check for $1,700,000 some odd dollars and like 17 cents. And they still have that check mounted on the third floor next to the Senate chamber. So they took that money and about $250,000 of the state budget, and that's where they got the money to build.
So you said $1.9 million, right?
Approximately $2 million.
Approximately $2 million. Okay, so $2 million, and it was built in
They finished in 1909. The legislature moved in 1910.
Okay, so we'll just look at 1913. That's the farthest back the inflation calculator goes. So that would be the equivalent of right around $66 million today. So we spent $66 million accounting for inflation, inflation adjusted number. We spent $66 million building the Capitol building. And how much is the remodel?
$291.5 million.
So the the remodel's $300 million. Right. And we only spent $66 million even building the building in the first place.
That's right. And I'll tell you where some of the extra money's coming after our break.
Okay, we're coming up on a break here. You're listening to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider, joined by Lee Watts, host of Patriot Point. If you want to reach out to the show, go ahead and shoot us a text, 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. We'll be back in a few short minutes.
Are you ready to stand for truth?
All right, and
Kentucky is at a crossroads.
We will be,
and we need voices that won't back down.
All right, well then I want to.
This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And you're back here on Kentucky's Voice. Host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. If you want to reach out to the show, feel free to shoot us a text, 502-571-0970. Got in a few texts after yesterday's show that we're going to cover here really quick before we dive back into this Capitol remodel, where we're spending almost $300 million remodeling Kentucky State's Capitol, a building we originally, adjusted for inflation, spent right around $66 million on. That's a pretty hefty increase. So yesterday, first I got a text yesterday. It said that was trying to reach out to me to talk to me about something. They'd like to speak with me directly. The 502-571-0970 text line is for you to text the station. All the hosts read that and everything else. If you want to reach out to me individually, you just email info@theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's info@theandrewshow.com. That's my email. You can also head over to theandrewshow.com to see all the places where you can listen to my regular weekly show that I do called The Andrew Cooperrider Show, because I'm vain and like to name things after myself. And then we had another question, though, that was digging into what I was talking about yesterday. I did a little bit of a rant on lobbyists, and they wanted to know how do they stop lobbyists. They said we need to lower taxes, cut out of state corruption. How can we stop the lobbyists? Lee, you've been up there a long time.
Oh, well, I really don't have a problem with a lobbyist, because that's just somebody saying, hey, I'd like you to be for or against whatever this is. And there's a lot of citizen lobbyists. I think one of the things we need to do is, one, limit the amount of lobbying that the state is paying itself to lobby.
That's what we were covering yesterday. Yeah. Taxpayer-funded lobby. It's truthfully, it's millions a year.
It's millions a year. For the last few years, we've had a state representative, Felicia Rayburn, who's been saying, listen, we should not be spending money to lobby ourselves, and wants to make it illegal. But the people getting the money have pushed to never get that through. But this is something which really needs to be brought to the forefront. And the only way it'll pass is if they get shamed into it. If more and more people realize what they do, and they get rid of it.
Oh, absolutely. So that is from our text line. Once again, if you want to join into the conversation, that's 502-571-0970. Now, Brother Lee, you have been chaplain up there for a while. You've done a lot of tours amongst the old Capitol building. Now, truthfully speaking, they're doing this $300 million reno project. First, let's just establish, did it need it? Did the Capitol building need...
I would say the Capitol building does need renovation. There was some, the roof leaks. They found trees growing. I was talking to somebody in the Secretary of State's office, and somebody, when they put in the carpet years prior, decades before, the floor was rotting. So they took some old highway signs, put it over the hole in the floor, and then they put the carpet over. And that's worked for 50 years. But when they took that off, they found a tree has growing up in between the walls from the basement and was probably going to poke out. And it leaks so bad. I've seen some guys in the Senate chambers put a glass on their desk when it rains heavy because water drips on it. So it doesn't have modern HVAC systems. It leaks. There's no handicap accessibility. So it definitely did need renovation, though I think it could have been done in a far more efficient and cost-effective manner.
Yeah, I mean, obviously spending so much more than what you built it for is certainly a little out of control. Now, you said it's going to take 3 years.
That was the original projections. It would take 3 years. But before the renovations actually started, the group that got the contract said, well, it might take us a little longer, maybe 5 years. And then again, before the renovations have started in earnest, I heard 7 years. And then I overheard one person talking to some people in the Supreme Court chambers and told the justices, well, you may not get back into your chambers for 10 years. So this temporary building is going to be where some legislators spend their entire careers and never actually get in the Capitol.
That is, so it went from 3 years to
3 to 5 to 7 to 10, and they just got started last month. So,
they just got started last month.
So we'll see how it actually turns out.
Is it not possible? This is the other confusing part I have. So they're moving everybody out of the Capitol building to work on
yes.
it. And I'm not an expert in construction. You're probably, I don't know what your background is outside
it's
of your
politics. Construction, I'll tell you that.
And so, but is there not a way they could have just worked on half at a time and only one of the legislative bodies would have to meet somewhere
I'd often
else
wondered, I'm
to
like, why not do it either by, we're going to do the West Wing, the center, and then the East Wing, or do it by floor? That would have made more sense, and you could have overcome any other things without the expense. I can understand why it's easier from a construction man. I just do it all at one time. But again, I think it could have been done a lot more efficiently.
Yeah, it leads to a lot of questions. We'll be watching that. Now, you've been the chaplain?
Yeah, volunteer chaplain now for 16, 17 years.
Okay, how do you get that job?
There was a guy who done it.
Volunteer position.
The volunteer position. How do you get to volunteer? There was a man who had done it for 28 years before myself, named Brother Joe Adams, and he was getting sick and was looking for somebody. And this is my home state. Grew up in Bowling Green, so the Lord had called me out of the military to serve as a missionary back to America, to my home state. And so I met him, and he explained what he did. And the Lord had put that on my heart. My last job in the service was working for NATO, and my job was to be a liaison to the foreign politicians. So I've been perfectly prepared for years what I was supposed to do. So I do not take any money from the state, though I've been offered that twice during different administrations. Amazingly, not this administration. But
that
during,
is shocking.
Yeah, shocking.
With how much
Shock
he
and
just
awe.
blows money. I'm surprised you weren't right at the top of the
No, I don't
list
think
to
I'm on his
receive a
Christmas
buck.
list. He did, in fact, during his daily propaganda hour, old Andy Pandy, as I call him, called me out twice by name during the COVID lockdowns and said, we're going to fire the chaplain because he's saying things we don't like. And then he found out I don't work for him. So I don't take any money
So
from
he
the
said
state.
he was going to fire you from your volunteer position.
Well, then he found out it's volunteer, and I don't take any money from the state. But I teach Bible studies. I pass out Bibles. I counsel with legislators. And I try to keep the churches and Christians in Kentucky informed on what's going on that might affect religious liberty and other issues conservatives would be concerned about.
So when you talk about counseling with legislators, do legislators come to you often seeking guidance on bills?
Well, there's two different
thoughts on
ways.
it?
One, sometimes they'll ask me to come and talk with them, sometimes about a family issue. Often they're far away from their home church during session, and we'll just counsel like a pastor would. And
Does that happen often?
Yes, that part's kind of in confidence on
I'm
who
sure
I talk
it's
to on that part.
I don't want you to tell me who it is,
Yeah.
Lee. I'm just curious.
And there's been some.
Give me the tea, right?
Who's cheating
family's
on their
falling
wife and all
apart?
that? No, and there's been some soul winning opportunities. When I'll teach a Bible study, I've had more than one over the years call me to their office and say, "Hey, I need to nail down my salvation based on what I heard you teaching today."
So you've even led some legislators.
Oh, yes, senators, representatives, some of the administrations of different times. That's my primary purpose. And then some of them will say, "Hey, Brother Lee, you preached at like 6 churches in my county last year. That's a lot of voters in one county. What do they think about this bill up for a vote today?" And my answer to that one is always the same. Doesn't matter what they think. Doesn't matter what I think. All that matters is what the Bible says. And there's always a biblical principle about every single issue of the day. Now, that's when they ask for me. Now, sometimes when they don't ask for me, I will ask to speak to them. But in that case, it's going to be like, "Hey, you're trying to," like when Andy closed the churches. If the legislature had tried to do that, everybody would have had an appointment request from Brother Lee saying, "We need to talk about this."
Right.
So that's the way that it works.
Now, you just weighed in there with a little bit on how you say, "Hey, it doesn't matter what your constituents say. It doesn't matter what these people say. It matters what the Bible says." Right? Now, some people would push back on that. They'd be saying, "Brother Lee, while I understand your faith, there's a separation of church and state, or people should be divorcing their religious beliefs from their political beliefs when how they're voting and everything else." And I want to know how you would respond to those people. But people, if you want to hear this response to that question, you're going to have to come back. What does Brother Lee Watts, volunteer chaplain to the Kentucky State Legislature, have to say about separation of church and state? That's a hook, I tell you what. You'll have to wait to hear that answer until we come back here from the break. You're listening to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider, joined by Lee Watts, host of Patriot Point. Where do people find you at? YouTube mainly?
You can find me on YouTube, on WBNA TV, and about 25 radio stations across the state.
It right here. They can find you right here. That's fantastic. Well, you're listening to Kentucky's Voice. Now, if you want to find out where I am, you can head over to theandrewshow.com, hit the Listen Now tab, see all the different places you can listen to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. You can also listen to it right here on 970 Sundays at 6 p.m. and Wednesdays on WBNA at 11 p.m., 10 p.m. We'll be back in a few short minutes.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And you're back on Kentucky's Voice, your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. If you want to jump into this conversation with me and Brother Lee Watts, host of Patriot Point, you can shoot us a text message, 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. Before the break, Brother Lee here had mentioned that through his volunteering as the chaplain to the state legislature, you have counseled some people on bills. They'll ask you, what do you think about this? Or what do you think my constituents think about this? Because you're active maybe within their districts. You preach at some of the churches as a guest preacher at times. And you responded with saying, "Well, it doesn't matter what I think, what your constituents think. What you think, it matters what the Bible says." Now, people would push back on that and say, "Look, Lee, you're bringing religion now into faith. You're trying to into faith, into law. You're trying to legislate morality. You're detracting from the separation. You're establishing a state religion," one might say. What do you say to those people?
Well, often when people say the separation of church and state, number one, they think they're quoting the Constitution. However, I've read the thing. I encourage you to actually do that. Most people have not. That is nowhere in the Constitution. It's not in the Declaration of Independence. This phrase actually came from Thomas Jefferson when he was writing a group of pastors. It was the Danbury Baptist Association of Connecticut that said that we're worried that the freedoms that we have under the First Amendment, it never says that your freedom of religion is guaranteed to you a right by your creator, which was the rights listed in the Declaration of Independence, which Jefferson had wrote. But now Jefferson is president, and they're like, "Hey, we're concerned that they're going to start legislating our rights." And Jefferson said, "Don't worry, we've built a wall of separation between church and state." And that is where the phrase comes from. It wasn't a concern that the church is going to be too involved in politics. It was a concern that one day politics is going to tell the church, "You're not allowed to meet today. You're not allowed to baptize people. You're not allowed to have more than 10 people in your building."
I can't imagine that ever happening.
Yeah, crazy stuff. Might send the state troopers to try to get people. So that's where the phrase comes from. Now, if we think about this, as I've even had Christians tell me this, well, I keep my religion, my politics separate. If we have an area, any area of our life where we're like, God, you stay out of this. If we think about it, what a satanic idea to say, hey, we're going to run this without God. So it's not in the Constitution nor the Declaration, and it's a downright satanic idea to say we're going to keep God out of government. And when it comes to legislating morality, almost every single law you have is for a moral reason. Why do they say, I'm not allowed to steal things from other people? Well, that's morality. So
Sure.
Somebody's making these different choices. So I don't think that we should kick God out of any part of our lives. The theme verse for my ministry is 2 Corinthians 3:17, which says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And when you take the Lord out, you will have less and less liberty.
Now, to that side of things, so we obviously, as you mentioned, laws regarding morality, they're all moral laws. They're all saying something's right or wrong. A pushback some people have, and to be clear, I'm not saying I have this pushback.
Nope.
Sometimes guests confuse this for beliefs I have. I'm not saying I do. I just hear people saying things, and so I like to always hear what
Sure.
others have to say, especially a person who is as theologically learned as you. I don't know if that's the right terms. I don't
know if that's the right term either. We'll see if I have the answer.
But anyways, so they'd point to something, take for an example, marriage, right?
Okay.
By saying marriage is a religious institution, but we brought the state into now legislating marriage, and then that opened up the opportunity for that religious institution of marriage to be corrupted by the state, bringing in place something like gay marriage and polyamory in some places, things that tend to go against biblical principles. Not tend, do. How do you handle those kinds of situations where you say...
I love to use history. The Bible and history are my two favorite things to go to. So yes, marriage is something instituted by God, not instituted by government. Existed long before government ever did. Number two, you have to look back. When did the United States government get involved in the idea of marriage and marriage licenses? This came along right after the Civil War because they wanted to stop interracial marriages, and you wouldn't get a license if you were an interracial couple. And that's the whole reason the government actually got involved in the situation to begin with. The best answer is like President Reagan had always said that the government really ought to get out of everything that it can. And I think they really ought to get out of the marriage business. And I think that would solve a whole lot of those problems.
Yeah, no, I've heard that argument too as well. I've also heard people say that it's about child rearing and taking care of children. Same-sex couples can't do that. So if government is doing it, they should only be opposite sex. I mean, hetero couples, I guess you'd say, because they can have children and you're worried about the upkeep of children and taking care of them. So that's always kind of interesting. Now, you said that there's always a biblical principle about any bill.
Yes.
Right. A lot of times I see bills that, I'm going to be quite honest, I don't know anything about. There was like a bill, I think of one bill that for some reason is coming to mind that was reclassifying cancer centers or something within our medical system. And I'm sure people in medical systems know that it's probably something to do with insurance payouts or something like that. I don't know. But, take a bill like that. What is the biblical principle there?
Well,
how do
when
you,
it comes
how
to
do
a
you
certain bill, and
translate
people
that?
will ask me about that, if it's not one that's just like blatantly obvious, I'll be like, let me read the bill, and then I'll do my Bible study time on that. So it'd be a case-by-case situation. But I'll give you an example for like the Capitol renovations, which was kind of the topic of the day. They spent all this money, and we've already discussed multiple ways where it could be done for incredibly less money.
Sure.
So the biblical principle there is when Christ told the story, there was this man and he had three fellows that worked for him, and he gave each guy a unit of money called a talent, not an ability, but a unit of money. Then he comes back, he says, what did you guys do with the money? The two guys who actually turned a profit and were capitalists, they worked or invested, he said, well done, to the guy who turned 2 talents into 4 talents. He said, now be in charge of 4 cities. And to the guy who turned 5 talents into 10, he said, now you be in charge of 10 cities. So he took a successful business person and put them in charge of government in a level proportionate to their success in running their business. Now, on the state level, we had Governor Bevin. a private businessman who had went from a home where they didn't even have indoor plumbing when he was a kid. I know his parents, to turning into a multimillionaire. So you put him in charge of the Kentucky government. You could look at every metric you want during his administration, like him or not. All the metrics said the economy is the best it's ever been in our history. On the same principle, you take someone who's more successful in business, Mr. Trump, on a larger level. You put him in charge of the American government, runs it like a business, and the economy, all the metrics, best they've ever been. When you follow that biblical principle, you get a good businessman. They're going to do things in a way that a business could actually turn a profit. But now we got a guy running the state who has never run a business, and we're seeing the money being wasted all kinds of ways. When you violate that biblical principle, it's going to tear apart your economy.
And your time up there that you've been the chaplain, how has the legislature changed? How have you seen people change? How have you seen the way business is being conducted up there change? Has it changed? Is it the same old, same old?
It has changed in a few different ways. I'll give you one of the ways. When the Democrats used to have control of the House of Representatives, they would sometimes spend up to, I've seen it go as long as 2.5 hours in just doing fluff before they ever got to the people's business. They will often have some artist come and play My Old Kentucky Home to open up the session. No problem with that. Happy to hear it. But then I had one of the legislators say, well, hey, I brought my guitar. Can I go get that in my office and play? And somebody else said they had their fiddle and banjo. So they had a jam session for about an hour, just playing bluegrass music, and then later got to the people's business. When the Republicans took charge, they don't do that anymore. They'll still have the Old Kentucky Home, but no more jam sessions. They kind of get to it a little more. Before the legislators all had their own offices on different floors, they were all together in just one big area with phones, and they'd argue on the floor, but then they'd all hang out and go see a ball game later. But when they all started getting their own offices and separated by floors, you started seeing more and more division where they weren't.
So you used to be in like a
central area,
kind of like a cubicle farm kind of thing?
Yes, very much so.
And then at one point they decided, hey, we're going to move you into offices.
Got your own separate offices and suites and like-minded people together. And you can understand the logic behind doing that. But by doing that, it also cut down on some of the camaraderie. So that's a few of the changes I've seen over
Some
the years.
people would say, look, you know, they would say that might be a good thing because they say this all the time. I hear it all the time. They look at Democrats, they look at Republicans, they say, you know, same wing, two wings of the same bird, you know, the two other sides of the same coin. They're the same people. And, you know, they'll argue on the floor and then behind closed doors, they're shaking hands. It's all, what is it in wrestling? Kayfabe or whatever. It's all fake out there. It's for the audience as far as that goes.
Well, I'll say this, when you see speeches on the floor on KET or the broadcast, that is political theater, because the decisions were made and the real debates were made in the committee rooms and over the lunchroom in the annex building. By the time they get on the floor, minds are made up, and that is just that's theater for everybody to see where they were. So if you really want to know what's going on, spend time in the annex.
What are some of the, you mentioned that not all Republicans necessarily like it too much all the time because you voice off. And there's been, obviously that would make me think there's been a few things that have happened with Republicans in control that you take some issue with. I'd like to discuss a little bit of that with you if we can, just a little history here, just because you have been in a unique position. I mean, you're not a part of the legislative process, but yet you have such constant, I don't want to say access, but more so attention. You have the same access as everybody else would, I would, or anybody else. But because of your role of being up there, mixed with going back to talk to the citizens, you're able to just keep a better eye on it. So I'd like to talk to you about that, but we are coming up on a break. People can check you out at Patriot Point on YouTube. What's your website?
LeeWattsUSA.com.
LeeWattsUSA.com. That's LeeWattsUSA.com. And you have some books too, author books. You have a weekly videos. Program you do, kind of like 15-ish minute videos you do, just covering some headlines about what's going on in Kentucky. I encourage people to listen to. But we'll be back in a few short minutes. This is Andrew Cooperrider, your host for the day on Kentucky's Voice. Stay with us after this break. Let's hear about some egregious things that have happened in the legislature.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And you're back here on this final segment of Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. If you like what you're hearing, you want to hear a little bit more about my show that I do, where I dig into state politics, you can tune into it right here on 970, Sundays at 6 p.m. And then also you can watch it on WBNA Wednesdays at 11 o'clock. I believe, yeah, Wednesdays at 11 o'clock. And I'm joined today by Brother Lee Watts, host of Patriot Point. We've been talking, covering a lot of topics. We've been talking about renovations, talking about separation of church and state. And before the break, I had asked you a question regarding, since Republicans have taken control of the legislature, and you do counseling and you talk to people about what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing when they ask for it, sometimes when they don't. Right. And you've kind of seen what's happened up there. What is, in your opinion, some of the more egregious things you've seen this Republican legislature do, and why do you think they did it? And why do you take issue with it, too?
That's one of the things. I'm an equal opportunity hard time giver. I really rail on the governor and the Democrats. They give me so many opportunities. But if the Republicans are doing something wrong, you can't ignore the literal elephant in the room. Yeah. So I'll give you one example. It's where, to be honest, there was a time where I was in great favor with Republicans, and now that time is over. And it really fell to a few different Patriot Point broadcasts I had back during the lockdowns. The governor had shut down all kinds of things, was going crazy. So they were going to adjust the law that allows for the governor's power during emergencies. And the way so it had some problems with it. But when you get done with adjusting the law, what the law says, and they passed it, it's in the KRSs to this day. I think it's KRS 130A, if I'm not mistaken. And it says that the governor can take your home and sell it. He can take all your clothes and sell it or give it away. He can take your car, your phone, everything that you own except your guns, and he can sell it, lend it, or give it away. And I said, this is wrong. Nobody should have this authority for 30 days. Nobody should have this authority for 30 minutes to take my home and sell it and give it away if they want. The only thing they did is they said, yeah, instead of just indefinitely, he's limited to 30 days. And I said, this is wrong, and you guys are wrong for passing it. They did not like that at all.
Did they defend why they think that
I had one legislator call me up and say, the law doesn't say that. I said, I got it in my hand. He doesn't say it doesn't say that.
Fascinating.
So I said, one of us can't read. And he hung up and hasn't talked to me since.
Isn't that fascinating? I find that all the time when I am posting about things. I ran into this, Powell County Schools. I ran into this. I ran into this when I was calling out Scott County for not working. They wouldn't hold. They used to not. Now they send them on to Oldham County Holding Center. But when they had an illegal immigrant with a deportation order come in, they wouldn't hold them for ICE in Scott County, Kentucky, in Georgetown, Kentucky. They wouldn't hold them for ICE, and until citizens realized it, called them out for it, they then changed their policy. And I posted about that, saying, like, this is ridiculous. This has been going on for this time, and they just changed their policy a few months ago. And the county attorney comments saying, I'm wrong, proceeds to his statement, backed up everything I had to say. He agreed with what I was saying. He's like, no, we now do this, and that. I'm like, yeah, but before you did it. And that's what my post said, right? And so he backed up what I had to say, but he was really mad about it. Right. I've gotten into arguments online with Representative Kim King. Oh, yeah. About what bills she's putting forward says. Right. When she was in, she's left Huff. Not male Huff, female Huff. What was her first name? Regina Huff. She's not in the legislature anymore, but she put forward a bill to mandate people fill out the FAFSA form to graduate high school. And, that asks a lot of
personal
questions, information that's protected by the Fourth, Fifth Amendments, as far as self-incrimination, and then also as far as disclosing unreasonable search and seizure, disclosing things like my assets, my holdings, that the government would normally have to get a warrant to have access to. And I have to disclose that as the parent for my child now to graduate from public school. And she says, no, that's not what and it's like, you go round and round with them.
I put it on the screen. I'm like, this is their website. This is it. We can all read it together.
Right.
So anyway, they got very mad at me, and I've called them out. I'll repeatedly call them out. They were completely wrong for passing that bill. And so I called them out on it, and I called a few names.
Did they give you any justification of why they needed to keep it in there, though?
No, that's the only thing. I just had this one fool call me up, and I'm really biting my tongue not to mention his name, but I'm not going to.
Do it.
No, sir. No, sir. No need for that.
No guts, no glory.
Yeah,
Lee.
well, if you want to go watch the program. Okay. You'll see I call people out by name. But this was a phone call in confidence. But I will call people out by name, Republicans, saying, listen, you're trying to do this, it's wrong. I've had help to run some of them out of office because they're trying to pass red flag laws and others. I'll mention that name. His name rhymes with Senator Whitney Westerfield, who repeatedly tried to do that. So we're pushing against him, and he's no longer there. So, yeah, I'll call them out sometimes, but they have this idea. Like when I was calling out Andy for all his things, I was getting calls and texts and handwritten letters saying, great job, keep it up. But when I come up to something that the Republicans would do wrong, they're like, hey, you shouldn't be talking about politics. They didn't feel that when I was doing it the other way. And to be honest, I've done the same thing for my entire time.
And it's so... going to that, it's convenient for them in the moment. So, I don't know how many listeners even know completely what my background is. But I owned a coffee shop during COVID and kept it open during the lockdowns. We're still in court, by the way. We talked about that off air some other time. But yeah, we're still in court. They still won't give me licenses from the state to operate a business, a food business, an alcohol license. They won't give it to me. I'm not even allowed to manage one right now because we're still in court. But anyways, going away from that, I was at an event December of 2020. So this was when I was real popular with all the Republicans. They would all come in for their photo ops and everything else in my shop and say, oh, we're standing with them. We're here to help. Right. Hold on. And Damon Thayer, who was the majority leader in the Senate at the time, was doing an event in Lexington, and I went. I was just standing at the back. He recognized me. He said, oh, there's Andrew Cooper, everything else. And he took his picture with me, everything else, and he said, you just tell me what you need. And I said, Senator, I need one thing. I want one thing from you all. I just want my alcohol license and my food license back. I just want to be able to operate my business. You all agree that Andy Beshear shutting this down is wrong. You all agree with my actions that I'm doing. I just want those licenses back when this is over. And he said, you got it. He shook my hand on it. Lee, I'm still in court trying to get those licenses.
6 years later.
6 years later. They've had bills to give me back those licenses several times, and they refuse to put them forward.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's funny. They do want you to go after the Democrats, but when you start talking about things they're doing wrong, things the Republicans are doing wrong, suddenly now,
I'm not supposed to, you're just supposed to get along. And they will use a quote from Reagan saying, thou shalt not talk ill of thy fellow Republican. And while that sounds witty and folksy, that is not good politics. And if something is being done wrong, then call out the elephant in the room.
Yeah, I mean, if you're all on the same team, but they're trying to score a touchdown for the other guy, shouldn't you tackle him?
Right.
I mean,
so. Which is where, again, we're seeing some of the bad money that was really not physically conservative being spent with the Capital Renovation Project. And really, the House controls all the purse strings. So they're controlled by the Republicans. So this should be done in a far more fiscally conservative type of way, then it is.
Have you seen, going back to that, has there been any specific parts of that renovation? We talked about the temporary building that you're saying, like, this is just
I called out one a
expensive.
few weeks ago on Patriot Point, my YouTube program, about the windows. There's about 200 windows in the building, historic windows. And they're going to be spending $10.5 million in fixing these. And they do need fixed, they leak and stuff like that.
Hold on, how many windows is there?
Approximately 200 windows at $10.5 million. I did the math. That makes approximately $50,000 to $52,000 per window. And I'm like, this is crazy. I'm spending more than $50,000
Oh my God.
per window. So
Lee, that's like, there's like people's houses.
Yeah.
They're like $200,000 nice
yeah.
houses in Kentucky. They're buying, you know,
Right.
especially in rural areas. These are nice houses.
So that's
That's 4 windows.
we got tens of thousands of people to watch that program. I guess they got a lot of calls at the Capitol because I was up there the next week and I had a person, I won't name, come up to me and say, hey, you don't understand. These are historic windows here. And they got to do special things to take them out and reseal them. I said, yeah, but even a brand new super thing window isn't going to be that much. He's like, no, you don't understand. We're putting back the historic windows. So keep this in mind. I said, so then you're telling me I'm spending $50,000+ and I don't even get a new window. All I'm getting is it cleaned and resealed. This is the most egregious waste of money. And if you
Is it being sealed with gold?
I don't know. It should be, because if you're spending more than $50,000 per window, whether I get a new one or not, that is an incredible waste of money. And you start thinking,
not only that, but
what are they doing on all the other stuff?
But not only that, but okay, so you take the historic windows, right? Now, these are not stained glass windows, or
no, these are completely just
normal windows.
regular
Okay.
windows. See-through.
Okay. Could it not be? These are just normal glass windows. I understand the concept of keeping it original. Now, I just happen to know this. Nobody asked me why I know this. The difference between those windows and modern windows is those were at a time where it was hand blown glass and manufactured by hand glass, and it'll have these ripples in it that you won't get in a modern window. When you're looking out a window pre I think like 1930s, you'll start to see that that ripple effect where it's like a handmade window. Surely there's somebody out there still making windows in this way. Surely you could, for less than $50,000 a window, hand make the windows.
I think you could hire one of these blown glass artists, and I know they still exist because I see them in Dollywood every time I go to visit, Several Dollar City, and you'd be like, hey, we're going to pay you $500,000 to make these windows. We still would have we would have saved $9.5 million.
I mean, you could just pay them $1,000 a window.
Yeah, and
they
he'd be
probably
super
would have
happy.
done it.
Yeah. So if that's what they're doing just on the windows, imagine all the extra money's been spent on all of these extra things. How I wish we would have Doge come over and look at this and go through the books on it.
$50,000 windows.
A little more than actually.
Well, on that bombshell, Lee. $50,000 windows. Well, if you're not upset, I sure am. Make sure you're reaching out to your legislators. This spending's out of control. Lee, thank you for joining us today.
It's been a joy.
It's been fantastic. That website is leewatts.usa.com. LEEWATTS USA.com. He's got books, fiction, nonfiction. It's got the Patriot Point podcast / program you can watch on YouTube. All major podcasting places, I assume. But thank you all for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow.